but I will say that the trend shows that 2022 is going to be a critical year for us. And I think people in the cities, especially, are going to be waking up here, and they're going to be going, wow, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to get food? Like,
friends, it seems like big government, tech giants, and unelected oligarchs are trying to destroy America. And you can see the supply chain disintegrating across the planet. And one of these things that's going to fail along with that will be the food supply chain. Do you have enough emergency food? Most people don't, and they'll panic when the time comes. And give yourself the peace of mind knowing that you have storable foods. 20 plus year shelf life allows you to make wise choices, be able to stay home, avoid the chaos. So head on over to foodwithadapt2030.com and see what else My Patriot Supply has to keep your family's grand solar minimum prepared. And now on with the video. And good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Raymond. Remember, he and I did March 2017 an interview, The Real Martian. You'll find that in my playlist, where we were talking about agriculture, indoor agriculture in snowy and cold weather environments. And he had developed his own systems to work in a greenhouse, even in snowbound up to waist-high snow that was still producing on an automated fashion. And that's when we first connected. That's been a long time, 2017. But since that time, he has won, Motherboard. It's a very famous site. A lot of people will know that for the tech and different innovations here that's around the planet. And there's so many ways to go with Motherboard, with the articles there. Human of the Year for bioregenerative food and energy production systems. Now, that's a huge compliment, because what he's also been working on recently fits right into the same mold of some of these problems we're experiencing with food production, supply chain constraints that are getting a little more, let's say, amplified. And we're going to walk through this in a couple of ways here. First, we're going to discuss the problem, and then we're going to discuss the solutions, because it's great to talk about a problem, and you could do that all day long and just feed the fear. But what about a solution that people know they can take action, know that there is a possibility for them to move through this the best way possible, with the best chance of, still living and thriving during these changes. This is a cycle change. We're at the very beginning of it. So it's not going to be a 1 day, a 2 week, or something like this, a 1 month event, and then it's finished and everything reverts back to the way it was. It's going to take several generations to move through this. It's not going to be a 1 day, 1 week. So think of it as a multi-generation thing, where what we're building now is, go back to the 1900s when they were coming out of horse and wagon, moving over to automobile transportation. This is the same thing, the countryside movement into the cities, and that whole build out of what we know as modern civilization from the countryside. Well, now it seems it's exhaling, and people are leaving the cities back to the countryside. And there's a lot of, feelings, I guess, sixth sense, if you want to call it that things have changed. They're going to continue to change. We're going to have to think of different fashions to get through life in itself. And one of the base things is food, no society, no food, no civilization. So it keeps coming back to this again. Food is going to be the most important thing in our lives, and you're going to want to have nutritious foods and be able to supply and provide for your families or yourselves and others too. So that's how I kind of wanted to frame it for today. So Jeff, I appreciate you joining me again. Many things to talk about, and plus you have Eden Grow Systems, which is also what we wanted to talk about today, different tower grows. And this is going to be a solution-based episode more than it is, talking about the problem. But we do need to frame it on what both Jeff and I see in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, before you might realize why you want to think about indoor ag or greenhouses or just ag in general that you can put some automation into. So Jeff, thanks for joining.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, hearing you say 2017, it's like, wow, where did all of that time go? I mean, time is truly flying by, and of course, a global pandemic and everything that we're dealing with kind of speeds things up a little bit. You kind of lose track of what is going on out there. It's just moving so fast. As I get older, it seems like it's moving way too fast. I hear that's just going to continue to go. But yeah, talking about framing the problems, and of course, one of the things you and I have spoken about is I really believe that the good Lord has blessed me with the opportunity to be with people like yourself, to be with people of the team that I have at Eden. And he's provided us funds and skills to be able to come up with solutions to help people through challenging times. Like, it's one thing to sit there and say, hey, things are going bad. It's another thing to say, hey, things are going bad, and here's something that can help make it not so bad. So it doesn't have to suck as bad. And I will say that if you look at what we're going to end up talking about today, you need to go back and watch Dave's original videos from back in 2017. Even before that, you need to go back and watch others, Oppenheimer Ranch, Ice Age Farmer, everybody else that's out there. This discussion about what's happening in the world and what's happening with food is not something that's just happening because prices in the market are going up today. This is not in reaction to a headline on CNN or MSNBC that says the price of lettuce is 200% increase, and oh my goodness, it's Donald Trump's fault. That is smokescreen for the fact that this has been talked about for over 5 years, that this is going to happen. And Dave, you should feel a sense of vindication for what it is that you've put up with, what you've gone through, because the stuff that you've been putting out, I didn't just believe you when I saw your stuff. I went and pulled the Maunder minimum information myself from NASA. I compared it to trends. I looked at it. I cross-referenced. I look at different publications and stuff, and then I just watch. And the interesting thing about what we're seeing happen in the weather is the trends that you and others, because it's historical trends, I don't mean this offensively, but what you have found is the trend. And you just told people about it. It's not like it's some hidden thing that you have to be a super scientist to figure out. Normal people can actually watch what's gone on in history, and you can see that this trend of the climate is changing, but it's not changing because of just cow farts. It's changing because it's supposed to change. It's part of a cyclical nature of the system that we live in. And as a systems engineer, I get that. Systems go through ups, they go through downs, the sine wave nature of things. It's what we're going through. And again, for the people who are just tuning in, I want to encourage you, go back and look. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. This is something that Dave and others have been putting out for a while. This is happening. It's going to get a lot worse. And what we mean is food. Food availability is what it all comes down to. Forget everything else. You need to eat, you need to drink, you need to be secure, the basics. Maslow's, you're going to get right down to the bottom of it. And I cannot encourage everybody enough. If you have land, plant food now. You're already late, but it's never too late to start growing. You need to get your seeds, you need to go through the process, because as we've shown on The Real Martian, like, you just don't go and start planting food and get it. It is something that is a process. It is a journey. You need to go thank a farmer. I'll put it that way. You need to thank them, shake their hand and say, thank you for what you do, because what they do is, quite frankly, miracle working. And it's growing food's hard. And what we want to do with the solution is we want to get it to make it easier. We want to help you get through that learning curve. And that's what we've done on The Real Martian, and what I'm going to talk to you about today on the Eat and Grow System. So back to you.
Yeah, thanks for that praise. Well, I saw something that was against the narrative. So when you don't go with the narrative and you don't follow 100% with the talking points that you're supposed to regurgitate to echo through the society, and, coming out, I'm going to go a little woo-woo here. I'm going to say unequivocally that the reason the world is moving in different shapes and fashions to control access to food, as we're starting to see slowly, drip fed in here, where you can buy food, what you have to do to go into stores to get food. I'm saying that somebody in power knew these cycles were repeating now. And this was going to be a huge problem, because hungry people are angry mobs. There's no way to control them. They can go through and do the psychological studies on an impetus of what it would do, and then what kind of emotion response you would have, and what the outcome would be on almost everything out there. That has been mapped for 100 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars spent in all these psychological studies on, if I stimulate this way, you're going to move and do this, pretty much is the outcome. And they figure the number of outcomes, and then they can determine from there. The only thing they can't really figure out, because the body goes back into that base mode for survival, is starvation and food, deficit of food. Your brain works differently. Your behaviors, or you're off at just a hair trigger. and feeding your family becomes the most important thing. So out of all the studies they've done for well more than 100 years, you're going to have to go back even in the 1800s. Food and starvation is the thing that is uncontrollable for a society. So now, if you knew this cycle was here again, it would affect food production and the economy. Maybe you would want to control that more tightly before it would get out of control. And, that's about all I'm going to say on that. But, the years of study I've done, it seems like a lot of things have been pre-positioned for this particular time right now to control the masses that are going to be incredibly angry when their food prices get so high that they can't afford it or it's just not available. And just from the farmers, they are miracle workers. And I'm glad you brought that up. As long as they have the inputs. And this is one thing we're looking at this year is the fertilizer is not going to be available. And I have some numbers that I've been looking at for at least 8 months now after seeing that CF Industries report. 12% globally is the average that they're going to just put out there for a global average of non-availability of fertilizer for farmers. Now, I can tell you right now, if you do not have a registered farm, you are going to have a difficult time accessing fertilizers and herbicides as the average person going into a farm co-op if you're going to buy in bulk. You can still get it from Home Depot, but it's probably going to be 5x, 8x higher as we get in through May and June when the planting season really starts. And one last caveat here, Jeff, the herbicides that they run in the rows of corn. Now, grasses, you got to break different plants into two types. We got grass and then broadleaf. Well, when you plant corn, mainly it's grasses that emerge in the field rows. So they need glyphosate, Roundup, whatever you like to call it. That's not going to be there. And with the fertilizer prices going up 400% already before planting, a lot of farmers are switching away and just say, we're not going to grow corn. We're going to move over to soybean or other bean varieties. They got clay peas and different types of field beans, et cetera. Black-eyed peas. There's a whole bunch of beans that are going to be grown this year. Some will be more specialty crop. Some will be more mainstream, like for crush, soybean. The herbicides are already affecting to the point where we're going to have a corn shortage coming in. And if you look at the supermarket, the average supermarket, almost everything's corn based. Even our fuel supply that does ethanol is in there. So there's going to be a huge disruption in the corn market. And I don't know if it's going to be a feedback loop where the media then starts to say, hey, there's a food shortage to encourage people to buy more to create an artificial shortage, or if it's just going to let to be run and people will figure it out on their own. I'm not sure. But that's like an instant inbound May of this year, just a couple of months when the planting starts and the farmers start talking about how they don't have the inputs. And then you can do simple math and you can figure out what the yields are going to decline because the input's not there. It's pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio, at least what I've heard. Herbicides will have a certain amount of bushel reductions per acre, depending on the amount not applied to control the leaves, to control the weeds, because they're trying to get the same exact nutrients that the target species is, let's say soybean. But the fertilizer that you're putting in there is the food for both. And then the fertilizer is not going to be there. So you're looking at this downward spiral of one affects the other, affects the other, affects the other. So that's how I see the food getting really important, really expensive, and it being kind of the center point of all conversation moving forward after May. I don't know if you'd agree with that or if you're seeing something similar, but at least that's where I'll put it at the moment here.
Yeah, you're obviously closer to the information side of things, and I'm more closer to the technology and building the solution side. But I would say 2022 is going to be a key year for everybody's. I think their eyes are going to be open to what's going on. I think we're seeing that globally. I think we're seeing that people are now going, I could take a lot, but this does not smell right. It does not pass the sniff test. And when I go to the grocery store and I see shelves in America, we're not used to this stuff. So when we see it, everybody else has already been hurting for a while because we're spoiled children over here. But I think 2022, we're going to see it. I read this book once. It says something about a day's wages for a loaf of bread. And we're seeing that happen. We're seeing things that have been forecasted for a while. They're all occurring. I'm not a huge date setter or anything like that because I just don't have enough information. But I will say that the trend shows that 2022 is going to be a critical year for us. And I think people in the cities especially are going to be waking up here, and they're going to be going, wow, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to get food? Like, I heard this story once. I think it's probably an urban legend. They asked some kids in the in the city, you know, where does your food come from? And their answer was Trader Joe's. And they're like, that's true. That is obviously, that is a very true statement. But that wasn't the intent of the question. And sad that unfortunately that is the direct answer. The food comes from the ground, it comes from the earth, it comes from farmers doing good work. And I think the people in the cities, especially, I think they're going to start to feel a pinch here. That's going to, and the evidence shows that that is occurring. I mean, we're seeing mass exodus from cities. We're seeing people getting out of Dodge, and they're going to places where they have some land and they can be a little bit away from things. They're more secure and they can grow food and decisions. But not everybody has the money for a home. There's a lot of underprivileged folks that are stuck in apartments that just can't go do that. And what are we going to do about them? And at Eden, the Real Martian, what we doing? And we think we have solutions for those people. We're going to talk about it later, but you know, when I talk about the stuff that we're doing, it's easy for people on my channel to be like, why don't you just grow food in a garden? Well, of course, if you have a garden, you should be growing food in it. You know, I'm not going to tell you that my system's better than a garden unless you don't have a garden, and then my system rocks it. Like you can't beat it. So, but I think back to your exact question, I think 2022 is going to be a pivotal year. I think we have some key things on our horizon that are really going to shape the geopolitical as well as just the environmental. The environmental that we see right now, the huge push of cold air coming down in the Americas and hitting. Now our Eden is based out of Houston. It's colder in Houston right now than it is at 2,400 feet in the Pacific Northwest up in the Cascade Mountains. They're in the 30s today, and we're up in the 40s. Which, by the way, if you look at the modern minimum mapping that NASA has, that David has available on his site, he usually always links it in pretty much every video, you'll see that's exactly what we're supposed to see. We're supposed to see a cooling with little pockets of warm, and some of those pockets of warm, let's see if Alaska sound familiar, Pacific Northwest, how about Greenland? Those are things that if we look at the maps, we look at the recreation from NASA that David has put up and made available, and others, we're going to see exactly what we're starting to see. And we're going to see that huge push of cold air that comes down. And that's what's going on. It happened last year. It's happening again this year. It's going to keep happening. So environmentally, crops, North Dakota, they had a late spring because of the thaw. It took forever. The entire Midwest last year, I mean, it's amazing we got any food out of them at all. And then we had the huge derecha. We're seeing the environmental impacts that were discussed over 5 years ago, over 10 years ago by others. We are seeing it. So I think it's really going to be manifest this year because of what we went through the last few years. The springs have been bad and the winters come early. The freezes have come early for most folks, and the ground's just junk. And that's leaving off all the stuff we've done to the land. Geopolitically, there's a few things going on. We have Ukraine happening in Europe. For everybody over across our pond, our brothers and sisters over there, man, we're praying for you guys. But that whole move in Ukraine, I think it's all about natural gas, but I'm not a politician. I think it's about Russia controlling Europe's energy. And we're seeing moves there. We're seeing the price of energy in Europe go up through the roof. We've seen some bad decisions by policymakers on technology. Why are you getting rid of nuclear power plants and putting up windmills that don't work when it's not windy? Like, what's going on there? You know, you're making bad decisions. But if Ukraine pops, and then we have, again, I believe, with the lack of stability in the United States right now, and our role being diminished because, you know, Americans are Americans and we kind of screwed it up. I got to call myself out there. I should have voted a lot more, but I should have been engaged a lot more. But now the mess is here, and it's partially my fault. So I won't be a finger pointer. You know, I'll point it right at me, so I'm part of the problem here. But I would say that with our diminished position in the world, and we look at what's going on with Russia now, there's no reason for Russia not to do what they want to do. I mean, I would if I was them. And then if Russia pops, then I would expect sometime after the Olympics, we'll see Taiwan. And we already have a global chip shortage. And I have on my screen here ready to share for us later. But, you know, at Eden, we keep a list of risk for our supply chain. I have a person, our vice president of manufacturing production, his job is to get us out of China. And he's doing a great job, but he's keeping track of the risk. And China has stopped the phosphate exports. They've stopped magnesium exports, which are key not only for nutrients, magnesium for plants, they need it, but for aluminum is a big deal. And then we also have, they've stopped urea shipments, which sounds kind of disgusting, but it's key for fertilizer, which you've alluded to before. So I see, and then we have the midterm elections coming up. So we've got three big geopolitical things that are going on right now, in addition to the environment. And then, oh yeah, let's throw the pandemic and let's go ahead and throw inflation on top of all that. And we've got ourselves a big pile of poo, and it stinks to high heaven. And I think people need to start getting ready for it in a real way. And I'm not talking about going and poking your head in the hole. You need to build community. You need to get together. You need to do like what Dave and I are doing. We're different people, but we came together, we were brought together, and we're sharing, we're using the skills, the talents that God has given us, and we're trying to get out to people and get them aware and get solutions to you. So with that, I'll turn it back. That's my answer to, I think it's 2022 is going to be key.
Yeah, the big pile of poo. I wonder if we could biocompost that or. Yeah.
I got a digester. We could take the poo and turn it into liquid nutrients, liquid gold. We can do that.
Yeah, they do that in Nepal quite a bit too. So, it's proven technology, biogas, look it up. You can supply a city with power if you use all the refuse from a city.
Yeah,
excuse
absolutely.
me. And I wanted to throw in Tonga, the eruption, because I found a lot more information on the Southern Hemisphere cooling for the molar minimum. It's mainly based in the Northern Hemisphere for a lot of the studies that were done. There's been a few new maps of people going through the information, synthesizing all these data points. And not only was Argentina and Brazil most heavily affected as you look around for the cooling in those temperature reconstruction maps for the molar minimum, but at the same time with Tonga, the ash that's going around the planet, it's crossed the hemisphere, between the hemispheres now, but just let's focus on the Southern Hemisphere for a moment on crop production there. So what I did is I went through all the countries in the Southern Hemisphere and looked at their crop production map up there in planting, mid-season, or harvest now, because the ash is going to create a lot of acid rain down there. There's going to be particulates blocking sun. Weather patterns are going to change because there's more nuclei for droplets to form. There'll be more precipitation, and just a lot of things are going to change. So I was looking right now, as they're already, forecasting to put it in the books, Argentina is going to be one of the most heavily affected countries. So all you have to do yourself is you can go to the USDA crop maps and then look in to see which continent has which countries and go by the country and see where they sit in there. Like I say, the mid planting is what you're looking at right now, the mid growth stage, because that's where all the uptake's happening. That's where the final maturation for the kernel sizes, ear sizes happens. But if it's acid rain and things are a little bit different, if it's too wet or there's not enough sunlight, that's going to really, really affect the yields coming out of there. Not a lot of people want to talk about that. But another thing with Ukraine, it's the largest breadbasket in that part of Eastern Europe. And Kazakhstan also supplies 10 million, that's right, 10 million tons of grain over to China. And it's just really quirky, in my own opinion, geopolitically, that Kazakhstan has these huge problems, but it's a swing grain producer, 10 million tons. And, you come over to the Ukraine and you get about 8+ million tons out of there. So these are two gigantic bread baskets, and both of them geopolitically right now, I think they're going for the food in addition to the energy, both. And I think
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think as time, spins forward, it would not surprise me if China went into Myanmar, because having bought coffee down there, and that's how I originally got into this.
That's right.
And by the way, the guys who were doing it way before me, John Casey, Dr. Tim Ball, Anthony Watts at WhatsApp with that, Dr. Roy Spencer, who runs the University of Alabama, Huntsville satellite data sets there that are the most reliable, non-biased of the satellite temperatures for global warming or cooling, whichever way you look at it. Like, there were a lot of people prior to me saying, whoa, we got a huge thing coming in here also with cycles, and they're going to try to cover it up. The excuse was already made when the changes occurred, so the global populace would not have such a reaction to it, because it was already explained that this is going to happen because you're doing XYZ activity. Okay, if you limit that activity, we can change the weather patterns back so they're not so out of kilter. So the excuse was built in, so it doesn't seem such a scary thing. It's like, all right, we can do something about it, or governments might plan to do something about it, but it's all about having that excuse ready, Because if you explain it to the global populace, like you and I are talking, oh, by the way, this is a multi-century, multi-millennia event. Societies usually collapse, restructure themselves. The economy shatters, re-rises in a different shape or form because value needs to take new form because people aren't working the same jobs. They're not producing the same goods. Same transportation network is not there to deliver something of value that then can be taxed, or everything breaks down and has to be restructured again. Hence cryptocurrencies at the same time coming in, and all these new pillars of a new type of monetary system, from carbon allocation credits and everything in between to the crypto, to the gold, to silver. There's so many things that they're going to have to restructure a currency on, global or within a nation, to ping value to that again. This all shatters every one of these events. So if you knew that, would you tell the populace what's going on? Or would you let them figure it out on their own? Because to tell people this 5 years ago, if it was on the front page news of every newspaper, people would have panicked 5 years ago before what we're seeing now. So, the fear that's in the media, or the messaging to prevent fear or create fear, is all through the media. So obviously they didn't want people spooked at that time, but they sure do now, because the messaging across everywhere is shortage, hyperinflation, prices up, your lifestyle is going to go down, your lifestyle is going to be diminished. And that's the messaging of today. So
you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it.
Yeah, right. Well, where does that leave you and I? Because I want to take care of myself. I believe I'm smart enough to make my own choices, to grow my own food, and have a community of people also in a farming community that we can survive out here. We might need metal from a smelting place in Pittsburgh or whatnot, but we can get that delivered in. Otherwise, leave us alone. We'll take care of ourselves. I don't need the nanny state telling me how to grow my own food. So, you look at the messaging across the media. Now, really, where do we go? Because you can see geopolitics is trying to grab food in addition to energy, and limitations on being able to get into stores now to purchase food. I just don't know where it takes us now, except the next logical step is more self-sufficiency from your end, your community's end. And that's the only way it can be. This whole centralized system, as you're alluding to here, is starting to fracture and crack at the edges. If you're trying to get out of China, that means that China is no longer reliable. And I'm sorry, was it the fourth port that closed this last week? Because I know Shenzhen, Tianjin, Ningbo, and Shanghai, those ports had all closed already. And then I thought there was a fifth one, a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, 4 major ports closing in China. So they don't export goods, just inbound freight food cargo like corn. And they're just,
why is China stopping exports, but they're bringing all this food in?
Yeah, they're bringing all the food in.
Why isn't that a big question that somebody asked?
But why are they in such an all-out effort to get all the food on the planet? They know something's coming too. They have longer records than anybody except the Arab traders. You got to go back to Arab trader days. All the Phoenicians all the way down that way. And then the Chinese, they have the oldest records. So they definitely know what's coming. Yeah,
absolutely. I when you're talking, what was coming through my mind is just leadership. I'm a fan of leadership. I have a master's in leadership, and I'm a student of it, and I love it. Some days I'm good at it. Some days I'm bad at it. But you asked, what would I do if I knew this stuff was coming? Well, I would have to evaluate the people that I'm in charge of. And I believe in servant leadership. I'm a Christian, as you know. I believe in the example that Jesus said, I did not come to be served, I came to serve. I think that is the best example of a leader that I've ever heard of or known of, period. There are great leaders, but that's the best example. Is I didn't come for you to serve me. I came to serve you. I came to help you become the best of yourself, because that is where I want you to be. That's a great leader. So I think if I was in charge, I would look at where my people are at, and I would want to be honest with them. And I have to have faith that they can handle it. And I wouldn't just come out and say, hey, everybody, the world's ending. We're going to have multi-cycle. That's not good leadership. That's really bad management right there. What I would say is something along the lines of slowly introducing in school curriculum, through news outlets, through outreach, the importance of self-sufficiency. And I would say, you need to get back to where y'all can do your own thing. I would prepare my people for what is coming. I would say, and then eventually you hit them with the news, like, okay, guess what? The reason we've been doing all these things is to get you ready, because we're going to be going through the crap. We're going to be going through together here, and we're going to do it together. It's not about us controlling you. I'm not some power hungry leader. that needs you to, do everything I say. What I want is for us to make this through it together. And to do that, we need to stick together. We need to not have division. We need unity. We need unity of effort. We need focus, and we need people to persevere and put their efforts into places that are going to be useful. That's what I would do if I was a leader, but that's probably why I will never be elected to any position at all, is because I'm too honest, I'm too sincere, and I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell them what they're going to need to hear, because that's what's important. So I would have taken a different tack than our leadership globally. I'm not just pointing out the United States. I say global leaders, they want control. And the problem is they want power, and power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that saying, those old sayings are so true. And we're seeing that, we're seeing it. They have said, well, we don't want to scare everybody. And then they scare everybody. Like all of the leaders now that we have, I shouldn't say all, that's stereotyping, but the ones that are big, that are out there making the moves, they're using fear to get you where they want you to be. And I'm not a fan of that. I don't think people should give in to fear. I think that's wrong. I think it doesn't mean that I'm not afraid, but what we should be doing is creating an environment where courage is allowed to flourish. Tough times make strong men and women, and we need to start embracing that and getting to it. But maybe that's a little bit of a sidetrack. You just said it and I felt like saying it. So it's an interview.
Yeah, well, here's another thing, with the Eat and Grow systems, you're talking about year-round food independence. And see, that's what people don't get, is the supermarkets have always been full all year round because supply chains work. Because if we were limited to what we could grow, we would get a harvest once a year off of traditional farming. Would that carry you through? A lot of holidays around the world, from Chinese New Year to Thanksgiving, et cetera, are all about the last of the food before the new planting season comes in, and giving thanks for the abundant harvest at Thanksgiving here in the US. But right now, Chinese New Year, happy year of the tiger for anybody out there. Did you notice the spacing on it right now? They've come through the entire winter, so they've used up a lot of their stocks. So then they would take inventory of how much food they had left or didn't have left. And we're talking hundreds or thousands of years ago, because what you grew is what you got. So then they would take stock of what they had now, and then that would be prepared in one last giant feast, enough to get everybody hopefully into the planting season. And then, families would share with others. And it was all about, okay, maybe you have a little more stocks, and these community or families didn't. So you'd have the giant feast so everybody could eat, and then get that last, like I say, that last bunch of calories to get. And then, the planting season will begin in just another month or so. In some latitudes, not all, but, you look here, we'll be able to start to get out planting next month in March for sure. Now, the late freezes scare me, but the whole point of that was year-round food independence. People just don't get it, that you get food once a year in a traditional crop rotation. So yeah. Where does that leave us with getting food in a broken supply chain on year-round deliveries?
Yeah, that's exactly part of the problem that we're looking at. And David, do you mind if I were to share my screen real fast?
Yeah, please do.
I think maybe some of your audience may not be fully familiar with our story at The Real Martian, so I'm just going to do a quick. This is on our Eat and Grow Systems webpage now, eatandgrowsystems.com. You can go there and check it out. But this is kind of how David found me, is when we built the Hab here. And thanks to Wrangler Star, if you haven't watched his channel, go check that out too. All part of the YouTube community here, who kicked off our channel. But we built this really large solar panel based greenhouse. It ended up being modified from this even. Let me get some more pictures here. Try to zoom in a little bit more. But here on the right, we actually turned it into the passive solar greenhouse concept. That's where we kind of ended up with it. Fully solar powered, anaerobic digester. We had 4 levels of growing capability inside of it. We grew $15,000 worth of microgreens. We grew potatoes. We raised rainbow trout, all automated, all controlled with an app. By automated, the control systems, the watering, temperature control, HVAC, all that stuff were all automated. We had to go in and harvest still, which is still a lot of work. And we have plans for that in our new versions. But I've actually partnered with Bart Womack at Eat and Grow Systems, and we are now business partners. And he separately was building what we call LifePod, which is essentially a mobile version of the Hab with a few less capabilities, but almost the entire thing. And He's very successful at that. Here you got some pictures of lettuce and basil and everything growing inside, doing some strawberries vertically. And aquaponics, he was growing tilapia in it. And we did rainbow trout in ours. But we had, he was really looking at the food side, and I was looking at the food and energy side. I really think it's key that this is about the energy, because it takes energy to create food. And if you come up with a lot of systems that are energy inefficient, then the return on investment, whether in time or money or lights or whatever you put into it, is negative. It sucks instead of provides. So this is what kind of got us all started. And when David and I are talking here about this indoor system, we call it the Genesis system. And we submitted a patent for it, bioregenerative crop and energy production system for terrestrial and non-terrestrial uses. That is the full name of our patent, kind of a mouthful. But this is where we started, and we started big. We kind of went against the grain. We're like, hey, let's build a big one first, because then we can just find other people's parts and we can throw them all together. When you make things small, it takes a lot of time because those parts don't exist. You have to go get those parts. So we got this big thing. We use pallet racking, wood, pond liner, stuff. And we built this huge thing. This is 80 feet long by 40 feet wide. I think it's huge. And 22 feet at the top. And lots of great videos on my site, hundreds of videos on the build of this thing. So you guys can go check that out. But it was working. It was working really, really well. And then unfortunately, it collapsed in a snowstorm a few years ago, about 4 years ago now. 4 years ago, 3 years. And we had 2 feet of snow in 48 hours. I couldn't keep up with it. And what happened is it got on the insulated side of the greenhouse here, and it formed a little bit of ice, and that's all it needed. And this whole thing came collapsing down. Videos on that on our site as well, if you want to go see the results. It was a very sad day, very, very sad day. So my wife and I had this decision point. We're like, okay, are we going to keep doing this, or are we not? And we decided, you know what? God has brought us this far. We've invested a lot of money. Let's take the risk. We're all in, right? So not long after that, I left my job of almost 10 years, successful, high-paying, good job, and we took the risk. We're living on faith. Partnered with Bart, got Eden going, started hiring people, did the design of the new one. Here, let me show this. No one's ever seen this. This is
hey, Jeff, can I ask you a quick question since you had that image there? What about your solar panels with snow on them? Because I remember before you said you'd have to get out there pretty frequently and get the snow off the panels. So just anybody who's thinking about solar panels for use as a backup or primary source in a snowy environment, can you give a little thought to problems you encountered or wins that you had using that there?
Yeah. And while we talk here, I'll try to find a better picture to help illustrate this point. But yeah, solar panels, a lot of people, including myself, I'm a fan of solar panels. I like them. There are challenges with it. It's a technology. There's manufacturing issues, supply issues, where you get everything from issues. But in general, I really like the idea of using natural energy as much as possible and feasible, responsibly so. But a lot of people are a little too, what's the right word? They're a little too hard up on it. They think it's like the end all be all solution. And if you get solar, save the world. Well, actually, no, you're not going to, because let me tell you how well solar works when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. It doesn't at all. It's a zero solar panel system. There's no place to put the snow. It's really difficult. If you have a solar array like ours, it is really, really difficult to manage the snow. Eventually, you just give up. You can get the snow off of it when it's like a few inches. You can clear it and let the snow. Once you get enough solar panels uncovered, then you can actually get the sun to take over, and it will actually melt off pretty fast. But when you talk about the dumping that we have, and what I think people are going to face a lot more of, solar is not a long-term solution. It is an excellent solution for the medium term. Here's a better picture for everybody. Sorry, let me make that bigger so you all can see it. So what you're going to see in this picture is a few things that we changed because of the snow. One, we needed more sunlight coming in because the energy requirements for having everything artificially lit is just too high. You need to use as much natural lighting as you possibly can. and you need to use that all year round. You'll notice off in the corner, I'm not hiding anything. These are propane tanks. We had, with the temperature deltas that we have, during the day, you hardly need any heating at all, but at night, you got to have heating. And the whole backside of this greenhouse here, the hab, is fully insulated with 4-inch thick waterproof insulation. And we sealed all the stuff as best we could, but you still need, I think it's 250,000 BTUs to heat this thing. And let me tell you, when you walk by 2 500-gallon propane tanks and that heater kicked on, all you heard was as the propane just sucked out of it. So there are better designs than this. I'm not saying, by the way, the Genesis system is not saying that this thing is the design. This is what we did to prototype our ideas, and we learned a lot from it. But these solar panels, this is almost 20 kilowatts of power, and it's enough to power our entire ranch, as you can see here in the picture. But once you get snow on it, and I think it was one of my first videos, once you get snow on this, you just cannot keep up. And what happens is snow slides down. So then I take my tractor and I plow the front of it. But you trust me, when you have a lot of money tied up in solar panels, you don't get too close to it with a tractor that can break it. So you kind of stay away for safety, and you blow the snow, and the snow will come off to a certain point, but eventually it just starts to back up, back up, back up. And you just need a clear day and a lot of clear days, and eventually it will slide off and melt. But yeah, solar panels, they're no bueno during big snowstorms. And wind is probably the next question. You know, it's like wind. This system was designed to work off wind off to the side. There's it's a poured slab, 3-foot cube slab that we poured to put a big wind tower on. We never made it that far because of money. But you know, when it's not sunny, we want wind. But let me tell you, at night when there's no wind, it's really hard to generate power. So we had a third source of energy here, which is the anaerobic digester, which is actually down in the ground over here where my mouse is pointing over. Hopefully that comes through, but in the top right corner of the greenhouse, it's built down in the ground. 12 cubic meters. It's still big. It would not produce enough methane to heat this whole thing. However, over time, you can collect quite a bit of methane, and you can do partial heating. So with the 4 ways of heating here, you have the daily heat, you have solar when you can use it, you have wind, and then you have anaerobic digestion, which creates methane. You can burn it for heat or for energy. You come really darn close to having an energy balance, and then get a better building and make sure it's insulated and has thermal mass and thermal heaters or mass heaters in it, you know, something with mass that can hold heat. You actually got yourself a solution. So that was our story with solar. And what I wanted to show you is we actually have modified that. This is a world premiere. No one has ever seen the Hab 2 design. I haven't even shown it on my side, I don't think.
World premiere, Adapt 2030, right on. And then propane prices have been going through to the moon as well. So, you know, when it used to not be so expensive for the propane, everything's doubled in price, or in some places not as available. You're on a rotation list here. So
I'll just let this thing go. But so what we're looking at is the new design for the Hab. We've actually modified this design even further. This is all conceptual. This is all designed. This is all real. We actually designed it, found all the parts for it. And here's the indoor aeroponics. So lots of grow area. You notice the walls are all completely covered with grow pods, and then solar panels all over. That's Bravo pod there, connected with a vestibule for entry. This is clear roof to allow some of that sun to come in. We had aquaponics in here. Again, lots of grow cups everywhere. HVAC system, all size. And the cool thing is the maintenance is all down below it. So you have your separation of purposes. You have your operational area up top where your food is grown, and then you have all the dirty stuff is down below. We learned that through the process of Hab 1. And then we actually were working with an early investor, and you can create villages of these things. They all connect to each other. As part of why they're hexagons, because honeycomb, you know, like a beehive. And you can bring them all together. And we actually created a living pod. It's like a tiny home is what we call it now. But you can actually, all of them share everything. So if one of them goes down, you can reroute power, you know, like on Star Trek. Oh, I've lost power. Well, let's reroute it through such and such. We can do exactly that with this design. And then you have a little living center here. And we did this for places like the Philippines, where there's a lot of people and they kind of have a housing challenge, they have a food challenge, they have a what are we going to do for work challenge. Well, our solution here with the Genesis and these habs was great. Like they could live there, they can generate food out of it, and it creates enough food. Just Alpha and Bravo create enough food every day for 4 humans, 2,000 calories per day. That's the math, and we have to prove it all, but the math works. In our experience with the Hab and LifePod show that this is a good idea, but and that's what we've invested. That's what we're taking the risk for. So this right here, we're really excited to get back to it, but we faced some major challenges when I first left my job, and we were doing this full design. This took like over a year to put this all together, and my wife and I, we were living off of savings for that time. And the challenge was that we're like, okay, well, we got this all figured out. And we made some additional changes because of thermal. We actually built a computer that would just go through and do the analysis for it. It took days. Like one run on the computer to get all the numbers we needed would be like 2 days worth of time, human time. And we got it all figured out. And we're like, okay, we're going legit. We can't just throw this up in our backyard. We have to go talk to the county. We have to figure out what the permits are. And they were super excited. Like, it was amazing. Our local county was amazing, but they're like, we're so excited to do this. It'll be like 6 months. And, you know, we're like, whoa. What'd you do? What'd you say, 6 months? And like, yeah, well, we've never seen this before. We're gonna have to evaluate it. We have to have these guys evaluate it. Like, okay, that's fine. We got to do that, but we don't have 6 months worth of money left. So we moved over to what we call LifePod, which is a mobile version of it. And if you put it on wheels, you don't need any permits or anything anymore. So we got a 50-foot trailer, parked it out back here. We had that's a playlist on our channel as well to start. And, you know, the first Hab collapsed under snow. So then we start this whole process of redesigning the Hab. We get through it, we shift over to this LifePod, and then all of a sudden we have this thing called COVID that comes out. And all of our investors are like, well, you know what? Global pandemic makes me a little scared. Rightfully so. Nobody knew what it was at the time. And well, yeah, now we can argue that too. But so what we did is we shifted gears. We shifted to what we call our grow tower. We actually have a few parts that were in the Hab. We have the grow towers and the grow walls, and we have our app. And we're like, okay, well, we can build those. We have enough money left and we have enough time. So let's go build these towers. And oh, by the way, I think your friend want to know, there's actually little robots in the Hab that go around and actually have sensors on it that actually scan everything so that you don't have to be there to look for pest or disease. And then there's one that it has a little picking claw on it, actually picks it, puts it in another one and just runs it to you so you can have it. So your harvesting is automated as well. That saves 75% labor just by doing 2 robots, 75% labor. It's amazing, but I digress. So we focus on these towers, and we're actually, this one that's shown is our version 2.2. And we're actually on version 2.3.1. We're building those right now out in the garage and in our shop. Now we got 2 guys out there right now building. They're doing amazing work. And we're designing our version 2.4, which we are selling on our site. And this tower does some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question about that? Because here, you know, automated aeroponics system, leafy greens, you know, a lot of people know that you can do greens pretty well. We've got tomatoes, strawberries, tuber crops, because you mentioned the amount of calories, 2,000 calories per day. So, you know, what type of species you're able to load in there. And my thing is always, can you grow grains in it of sorts? Because I would also target superfoods like Guyanura, which is this leafy spinach, a longevity spinach, things that have a lot of nutrient density, a lot of high value to it. So walk me through that process there of what we know traditionally, tuber crops, root crops, that's something different. And then could we put some grains in there too, and maybe do a target because a lot of times, a lot of the energy is wasted going up and creating the stalk. You know, I talked to a couple persons who were trying to do the target head only and reduce the stalk length on wheat. And this was going to be an indoor ag setting as well, to try to reduce that down to 4 to 6 inches and have all the nutrients coming in, but still have the head the same size. And this is specifically for wheat. but that's what it is. So I guess, is that too many questions at one time?
No,
The
I think I
listeners
can work
out
through 'em.
there,
Yeah, I think I can work through them here. So let's start with the first one is, tuber crop. What kind of crops can we do? Now, you're right. Traditionally, I think this is what you meant. Traditionally, when you look at, actually, let's step back to make sure everybody's on the same page. So when it comes to the definition of terms like aquaponics, aeroponics, hydroponics, people can get confused, but let's make it really, really simple. So normally when you grow food in the ground, you're just growing food in the ground. It's just agriculture. If you want to grow food without using dirt, we call that hydroponics, where you're taking a liquid nutrient solution and in some way, shape, or form, you're getting that nutrient solution to the roots where the plants need it. And there are different varieties of that. But what we're doing is taking the word hydro, water, ponics, growing, putting it all together, and that's hydroponics. Now, within the family of hydroponics, because it is what everything we're talking about is, hydroponics is just simply growing things without dirt. You still need a media of some sort. There's two subdivisions of hydroponics. There's using basic nutrient solution, which is traditional hydroponics. That's where you go and you buy the bottles of nutrient solution. It'll say, it has its NPK rating on it, and you use that based on the recipe that your plant calls for. The other subset is the newer one that a lot of people are really excited about, and that is aquaponics. So aquaponics is the combination of bringing aquaculture, fish, shrimp, tilapia, catfish. Those are some of the more popular ones, together with hydroponics. So you get aquaponics. And what you're doing there is your input is your fish food instead of a nutrient solution. And then the fish eat the food, the fish do their business, the business gets to the plants clean the business goes back, or the clean water comes back to the fish. That's simple aquaponics 101. There is another division within it, which is how you deliver the nutrients, whether they're aquaponic or hydroponic. And the method that we've chosen is NASA-based. They started the work, Dr. Raymond Wheeler, who I've been in contact with. He's a great guy. Dr. Gary Studi, who's now our director of research, former NASA. Aeroponics kind of started there. A lot of people played with it, but NASA did a lot of studies on it. They're very good studies. And we've taken that and we've commercialized it. And what aeroponics is it's a subset of hydroponics. It could use fish, it could use aquaponics to get the nutrient solution, but what it's really doing is it's taking the water, the liquid that contains the nutrients, and it's micronizing it. It's getting it really super small, like less than the size of a human hair, 50 microns. And what that does is it gets it so small that it makes nutrient uptake in the roots really, really easy for the plants. It also allows you to grow a lot of other stuff because you can play around with what you're doing in the root chamber and be a little more kind of specialized. So in aeroponics, which is what we use, we have a 2-inch cup and we put a grow media in it. We put the seed in it. We set it into our grow deck. We turn it on. We let it go. It germinates and then the roots start coming out. There's a picture of what really healthy aeroponic roots look like. And it's not the world's greatest picture, but it's one I can find quickly here. Maybe I have another one. Yeah, there we go. So what you're looking at here, they look way different than normal roots. So if you pull up roots from a garden, they won't look like this. I think these are like lettuces and tomato plants. Tomato plants, actually, I think is what's going on here. You see how white they are, and you see how branched they are. And what's happening is we have our little foggers down here, our misters, and we run, one of the ways we reduce energy is that our pumps only run for less than a minute every 45 minutes. And pumps are kind of heavy consumers of power. So because we don't use constant running water, which is an energy problem. It's a great way to grow things hydroponically, but it sucks up a lot of energy. Pumps take energy. So we just use it very selectively. It comes with challenges. Now, we have to have battery backups and things like that to make sure the pump's always available. But as long as it's hitting that 1 minute every 45 minutes, you get beautiful roots like this. And because it's aeroponics, it sucks up those nutrients a lot faster with a lot more efficiency. And because it's a lot of air in here that gets disturbed, you have a lot more oxygen getting to your plants. So you get a lot faster, a lot more vibrant growth. And we're seeing that. We're seeing all those things come as we go through the process of learning. So Our towers that we have now, next question. That's the methodologies. What can you grow in the towers that we've done? Let's start with the competition and what I saw when I started in this space. You could get all these little desktop things, the consumer level, hey, I want to, grow a head of lettuce on my kitchen table. And you pay me $200 and you get this little thing that will grow leafy greens or strawberries. And that's good, but it's not really a value add. It's more like a prop. It's like a, hey, look at what I'm doing. We wanted a system and a solution. We demanded a solution that would grow food that you could actually eat and make meals from. And so we actually have multiple variations of these towers. I'll zoom in here, where all of these towers can grow root crops. They can all grow carrots. They can all grow onions. They can grow beets. We've grown that. We've got videos on that. All these things we've grown. And the tower that's not shown here, but we do have videos of up on the Real Martian, is our potato tower. And that one we've just successfully figured out. We had to call the guys at NASA and talk to our director of research, and we got it all figured out. But it was a little bit of a trick to getting all the potatoes to tube. They grew great. We had these huge canopies of potato plants, but we weren't getting the tubers. And we finally got the tubers to go, so we were able to actually grow potatoes. That tower's not shown because we're redesigning it based on everything we learned. But we have a single deck that has no reservoir on it. All these towers are meant to be connected to each other. They can buddy breathe. So that means the towers that have reservoirs, our reservoirs are what we call bimodal. It's not because they don't know who they are. It's because they can do things multiple ways. They can operate in hydroponics. They can operate in aquaponics. So it's a 60-gallon tank, and whether you want to put nutrient solution into it or you want to raise fish, you can do that. And then they're heated as well, which none of our competition has. And then you put filters on and stuff for fish mode. But one 60-gallon reservoir can feed up to 15 to 33 of these towers, daisy chained to each other. So that you only need the one reservoir. You just got to keep it filled, and then the water goes to all of them. Depends on what crops you're growing, but that's why there's a range. But these all grow carrots, beets, garlic we've grown. I think those are the big ones. We've done onions, chives. We got a whole long list actually on our website here of ones that we've grown in our previous systems. And then I've got a bunch of videos up as well that we've put up.
Did I see that said banana at the bottom of the list there?
Yeah, in the Hab, we grew a banana tree. Yep. We actually did what's called split system aquaponics for all of these, the trees. We actually had non-local trees here. And unfortunately, it collapsed before we got a harvest off of them. We had a spider mite problem with the apples. The things that were non-system related that we dealt with. But yeah, we had little grapefruits, little peaches. The almonds, they didn't mature in time. It takes time for the tree to mature. They were just too young. Clementines, we had those on the tree. And the bananas, we had those coming up, but they never fruited. But yeah, we grew all of them. They got big. It was nice. It was really cool seeing that. These are all Hab. We did cantaloupe, watermelon, kiwi went bonkers. It like grew everywhere. This is all based on the techniques that we learned that we have now refined into our grow towers. And the grow towers allow you to, grow a whole lot of different things. I think we have tower features here. They're automated. So when you get the tower, you get it all set up. It's computer controlled. You get a little app on your phone, and you basically take your seed, put it in cup. You tell the app where you planted it at, and the system takes over. And it'll even tell you how long till harvest. There are some maintenance things you have to do, but less than 5 minutes a day. And you get 64 plants on this one that we're shown. It's called a double decker with a reservoir. So you got 64 plants. You can grow a lot with 64 plants. Lots of salad comes off this thing, but you can grow all your carrots. We're building a microgreen deck, so you can actually grow microgreens with it. I know you're a big fan of microgreens. I think you had those on your channel quite a while ago. We grew microgreens in the Hab. We know people want them, so we're going to be doing a microgreen add-on that you can have here. You can still have your 64 plants, but you'll be able to add on these wings, so you can actually grow microgreens on them. 4 of these towers takes up the same size as a queen size bed, and it will feed 2 people all 2,000 calories a day out of those 4. So that's not a whole family of 4, which is where we want to get. And the way that we can say year round is these are meant to be put into a garage right now. My wife and I, we took the first one, put it in our house, and my wife gave me the "Jeff, you need to work harder" speech, and said that we still have a little bit of ways to go to make it so everyone would like it in their home, but we're getting closer and we're working on that. But right now, these are meant to go in a garage, and they're meant to offset your dietary needs. We've grown corn in the tall deck. There was one that we have. Where's it at? This guy over here on the far right. This is for all the the cannabis people out there. We got a tower for you. Our light is automatic. It goes up and down. It's all connected, computer controlled, everything. Fans are integrated for pollination. And it's pretty easy to take care of, but we can grow with these towers. I'm safe to say we can grow pretty much anything. I wouldn't put a tree in one, so by anything, I mean your standard crops. You can get kind of crazy with things that you could grow. We've grown grapevines in them. Cucumbers, we've had them go absolutely bonkers. What is it? I have this queued up here. Here's a video. Let me reset it here. We got 3 feet of snow. This is actually 2 feet. This one was just getting going. But inside of our garage here, we have all these cherry tomatoes going. You can see the greens. There's actually 3 towers in here. This one's just going nuts. But we've had this filled with cucumbers as well. They were just going nuts. Lots of cherry tomatoes, yellows, reds, and then we got peppers going. Got lots of peppers off. Lots of peppers going. Green peppers, red peppers, all of them were all coming in and doing really, really well. And we've had tremendous amount of success with pretty much every crop that we've done. And what we're doing is we're taking all those lessons and then we run them by our director of research who's done this for a living. And we're like, what have we done right? What have we done wrong? And we're taking all the wrong things and we're writing software and we're putting it all into our app so that everything that we've had to go through, we're going to have the app just take care of all those issues for you. We're putting sensors into the tower. We're actually moving to some really cool technology that I'll share in the future, but it's going to really be monitoring everything in the system. We're going to be using AI, the good kind of AI, not the bad kind that does vision learning. So we're looking for the pests, we're looking for the disease. We're just going to be monitoring all that and taking the labor out, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, because I can say from my growing, we're moving over to hay bale gardening this year for potatoes, not straw. Remember, straw will rob your nitrogen. Hay, double twine what you consider bales of hay. Because we try to do sweet potatoes and they took off great, but it was an enormous amount of work harvesting those and digging them out of the ground. And, we missed a fair few. And after we decided to trim out and get everything for next year, there was a whole bunch of sweet potatoes left that we know. It's good at some points from doing it the traditional way, but we're moving our methods to something a little more efficient. But this is what it's going to have to be here is, what if we lose everything in the fields like we have? The tomatoes you showed were good because we had trouble growing our tomatoes later in the summer. It was just too rainy. We got 87% above the average rainfall. And then last year it was the same, but it was in the 90s. So 1.9x on the rainfall. And then this year was 1.87x on the rainfall. So it seems that here in East Tennessee, everything's becoming rainier. And, these fungal and mold issues are a real thing. So now we're considering row planting spacings in a different fashion to try to get more airflow through naturally. So, we have to double the size of the garden, not to double the production, but to leave space in between rows so airflow can come in. And knowing what it is and the progression that we've gone through so far, I just can't see any more than a couple more years before outdoor gardening is not going to be as reliable as it has been. There's a fair few things that didn't grow that well this year here as well. The grapevines, for example, very few people had any good luck with the grapevines in East Tennessee. The bees,
Oh,
even the director of our bee club lost hives because it was 70 degrees one day, and then a day and a half later, it was 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Plants weren't ready for it. Bees weren't ready for it. We lost colonies. Everybody lost colonies around here. So you can see the trajectory moving of where things being lost on what we consider, even using innovative methods on the outdoor grow. I got the greenhouse I'm building right now. That's great. But then what if a hailstorm tears it apart? We're going to have something more resilient, more rigid against what nature's going to throw at us. And, you know, I've been coming at this, but then I'm always about the protein, because protein is going to be valuable. If I could sum up a statement, protein will be valuable. You know, gold has its own value, but protein as a food source compared to a vegetable source, there's something very different in that. So, you know, you got me a little interested there when you said shrimp and fish. And then one last point, yeah. You know, people are going to be cooling their home, or not heating their homes as much as they would, or not heating their homes or cooling them as much. Because we talked about this before the show. You know, the power prices going up and people's electricity bills doubling, they're going to not turn their homes up as high on the heat as they will in the winter, or cool them as much in the summer. Now I'm finding the same thing working with another system out in the garage. I just can't keep my garage warm enough because it's so up and down. And, you know, they're even trying to use what you consider just a garage that's not, it's sort of insulated on the roof, but not in the walls. Yeah. So yeah, even the growing space inside. So your most, I guess, controlled growing environment is actually going to be in your living space itself. So, you know, there's quite a few things to contend with moving forward, but I think a combination of all or some are going to be the winning combination there. So yeah, back to the, like, I see tell me about the shrimp or the fish. That really, because protein will be king moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Protein is a big part of this, and that's why our systems were designed with aquaponics in mind. You know, when we did the hab, we absolutely had to have trout. Oh, we like, a lot of people like tilapia. I'm not one of those people. I wanted a fish I enjoyed eating, and what was marketable that I could sell as well. And rainbow trout for our climate was a great fit. And controlling the temperature for the fish was actually the major issue. Because kind of the secret, you know, I'll give away the secret. A lot of people who grow plants know this, but if you keep the roots at a good temperature, then the ambient air temperature becomes less important. It's still impactful, but it becomes less important. So you could have, for example, if it's 90 degrees in your greenhouse and your roots are at 90 degrees, then your lettuce will bolt. If your roots are at 65, 70 degrees and the air is at 90, your lettuce will be vibrant. Depending on how much sun it's getting, you know, if it's direct sun or not, but you'll have really good stuff. So the secret is in the roots. And for a band, there's a band of acceptable tolerance that the roots can handle. So what we've done for protein is we've created a system that you can grow tilapia or the giant freshwater prawns. That's what we've done. We've got mail order prawns that come up from Florida. We get them here. We put them right in the tank. We don't put them into our local ecosystem or anything like that. They go right into the tank like a fish. It's a fish tank. That's where we put them at. And they grow. They do well. They throw shrimp food in. And we're just really getting going with that. We wanted to make sure the towers grew plants first. So we started with the hydroponic method. And then we've now started going aquaponic. And it works. It does work. And you get protein out of it. I don't have rates for you yet because we haven't made it that far, but you know, theoretically, you're going to get a pretty good amount of protein from these things.
Can I ask a quick newbie question here about this?
Yeah.
Fish versus shrimp on the kilogram yield or pound yield for those of you in the States coming out. Which one is it going to produce more kilograms or pounds of actual either fish or, you know, shrimp? I'm not sure on the growth on which one.
Species dependent. What I like about shrimp, so like if you have a tilapia versus shrimp, I think tilapia are going to win as far as their yield goes. They're voracious eaters and reproducers, and they'll eat themselves. You give them what they need. I think you're going to, that's why people like starting with tilapia. Carp is another one, goldfish, pretty voracious, but not very tasty. Shrimp are good because they're bottom feeders, so they can do scraps. Because I'm thinking about total nutrient cycle, right? Like, how do I take table scraps and get them recycled? I think tilapia are actually a halfway decent choice on that one as well, because they really do kind of eat everything. And to me, that's a win. You know, I have a preference towards shrimp because I enjoy them more than the taste of tilapia, but this system will work with either one. So you choose is kind of the answer. But I think to answer your question, you're going to get probably a stronger yield out of a fast growing, fast reproducing fish like tilapia than you would shrimp. Shrimp a little bit more challenging to grow, but I enjoy the taste more. So I'm willing to, you know, have less of them, but still have them over tilapia.
Yeah, that comes down to it too. You know, these things that if you're getting yourselves ready with some preps, and this is just in a general sense, you know, if you don't like what you're eating, you're not going to eat it, because the difference between a fresh green bean and a canned green bean is so off the charts that you got to almost be starving before you'll even open that can of canned green beans comparatively. But you know, you're going to have to really eat and want to eat the things that you're producing out of there, just to, instead of just producing it to have and say, you know, I made it. Now you really need to you know, tweak that for your own personalized taste or your family's taste on what they would want to have included in their meals.
Yeah, we're actually when we put these towers together, we never intended that a person would get one of these towers and just go survive by themselves, because that's a fallacy. The lone wolf will die. You might survive for a little while, you may take down some elk, but you're going to die eventually when you face the rest of the herd. When another pack comes around, sorry to mix my species references there, but when another pack comes around, the lone wolf dies. You have to have community. And I've been a lone wolf, and God straightened me out on this one. Like, you have to, it takes a tribe, it takes a village. Humanity depends on each other. This whole divisiveness that's going on right now is anti-human. It is absolutely 100% anti-human to divide us. We are meant to be in community. Everybody, we're all supposed to be together, and we're all supposed to be sharing. So with that said, when we designed this system, it has never been design intent that a tower gives you the ability to go off and be by yourself. What we are doing is giving a local community, and it's in our mission statement. Our mission at Eden and the Real Martian, it's evolved to Eden now, is provide sustainable food and energy independence to local communities around the world, and one day off of it. That's our mission statement. That's what we live and breathe every day. That's what we give thanks for God letting us do. It's about independence, and it's about community. You get those things together, you got good stuff. But that starts with food and energy. When you get that, you're really in a nice spot. You can kind of control your own destiny at that point. So what we are designing in the app is a digital farmers market, to where people that have our systems, and eventually our app and the systems that we're building, we're moving out of the grow tower, and we're going to be taking the technology that we put in the grow tower and making it available for you in your garden, or if you're growing something in your windowsill, whatever. We're gonna take the tech that we've learned, all those lessons, all those skills, all those techniques in growing, including things like how close you should plant things to each other, or plant this next to this and don't plant it next to this, co-plantings. We're taking all of that, we're designing it all into this tower, and then we're going to migrate it into your garden. And we're going to give you the ability to say, oh, I have a bunch of extra carrots. Let's flip that up on the digital marketplace there. And this guy has a bunch of extra potatoes. Let's flip that up on the marketplace. Let's trade, right? I mean, that's how we've been built as a society since the beginning, together, working together, community. And I think I could safely say the way that you know what's going on around us right now is pure evil, is because it's anti-human. It's going absolutely against what we are designed to be, and that is in community with each other. Now, I'm an extrovert. There's probably a whole bunch of introverts out there that are going, well, I'd really kind of like to be off by myself. Well, in a survival situation, and when you need to make your own food, that's not going to be an option. You need to get yourself around people you trust and that you can work with, that you have tools that you can trade and make each other's lives better. And you're going to end up finding out, even if you're an introvert, when you turn the video games off, when you get off of social media and you're out there doing stuff that actually matters, your life is going to be more fulfilled. You're going to be happier. Depression's going to go down. And when you see where your food's coming from and you eat it, there is a sense of satisfaction that you can't really get from anywhere else. It's actually pretty amazing. And I think these towers for us, they're just the beginning of where we want to go.
Yeah, because you have to take that tribe back to, if we go back in time, if you were ostracized or kicked out of the tribe, you died. Think about how wild the world was even, 100 years ago, how much larger the forests were, how many more wild animals were out there, how many more hunters and trappers, and just things that were not safe if you were not in the community. And I talked to Dan Schultz about this, and he was telling same exact thing. 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, especially when I go further back, like 5,000 years ago, if you were removed from the tribe, it was a death sentence. But you got to bring that into the modern context here of what if, I have cameras all over the place, I was looking at here, and what if a group of 4 SUVs come up with 16 heavily armed guys come out of there and I'm by myself? A lot of these things playing out in people's minds, like, well, I'm just one guy. Oh, you got 16 heavily armed people coming up your driveway in SUVs. Then what? And it's not going to be you sitting there.
15 rounds at best. Maybe you got some extra magazines, but then when they leave and come back in the middle of the night, and you've been up for 5 days straight and you finally fall asleep. Goodbye. You're done.
You can name a million movies about the lone wolf always will make their way through. It's just not like that, because you're not going to want to be bugging out into new locations because people will be protecting those locations. But also on the inverse, if you're a food provider and you're incorporating people's skills that are trying to find their way into the community, doing a skills assessment to see how they can add value to the community, that's a whole different way to think, especially if you're able to overproduce and then connect with another community that's next to you. How do you think international trade started? Why do you think there was a salt route, the frankincense route? We got to go by the Silk Road. Why do you think all these things existed through time? It was because somebody overproduced and was able to trade with another place of something value they couldn't get themselves, produce themselves. And, I would see the same exact thing happening again. It's human nature.
It's how it works.
So we're going to revert, we're going to relive a lot of chapters of history.
Exactly. You covered the history much more succinctly than I could have. And we're going back to the basics. We're going back to the way things work, because that's what works. This whole control your food thing that we're seeing around, I think Christian does a good job of that on Ice Age Farmer, of really pointing out. He's done a lot of research. I mean, that guy, I think he just lives in the books. I don't know, or somewhere on the web. He's got good sources, but they're just, and you've done very similar stories. Like, they're just attacking the food and controlling it. I don't want that. And I know there's a lot of people like you and others we don't want this. We want community. We want to be part of society. It's not like we want to be rejects or something. It's quite the opposite. We want healthy community. We want it where you can express yourself truly in diversity. True diversity is what creates power and strength in teams. True diversity is you're different, I'm different. That is good. The diversity training that we see today is you're different, I'm right, you need to change. This whole idea that everybody just has to think the exact same thing or else is the exact opposite of what we are supposed to be. I mean, you and we probably sit down and agree about, I don't know, probably 80% of what we see as far as life, but we're going to disagree on some things, and that's great. That's how it's supposed to be. I want to be in a place where you and I can sit, I don't know if you drink, have a beer, sit around the campfire, have a glass of whiskey and talk about life and share our problems and disagree and be like, no, Jeff, you're wrong. No, David, I got a problem with that too. And then come afterwards, give each other a hug and say goodnight. Talk to you later, man. See you tomorrow. And that's the community that I want to be a part of. And that's the community that I want to surround myself with. And that's the community that's going to start growing its own food. And we're going to be the ones who survive and thrive. The ones that are sitting there or eating regurgitated worm guts, their skin is going to turn to pale, white, nasty, or some other color based on their race. And they're just going to be unhealthy people.
Well, I hope that if we were arguing, having some whiskey around a campfire, some beers or whatever, that we would make a list of notes for action items after that. Because, people talking like that, you make a huge list of things that could be improved, next steps, things that let's think about this over here. During these times when you might think it would be disagreeing or when there's a lot of information flow from two minds. So why did they have a scribe there before? Go back in history. When people would be talking, it wasn't that they were writing their own notes down. The kings or any nobles of the time that were wealthy enough to have scribes, they would have them write down the conversations. Same thing, because how much value comes out of that disagreement of different ways to do things, better ways to do, more efficient ways to do things. Instead of looking at it as a right or a wrong thing, think of it as ways to be more efficient, or ways to progress in the future. Because you're right, the yelling of you're right, you're wrong, I mean, that does nothing. That just cuts off the conversation, and somebody else downs a whole bottle of whiskey because they're depressed at the campfire, and that's no good.
Yeah, and we're seeing that. We're seeing people
Absolutely
do that.
it is.
And it's very understandable. But it's sad, and it's really unfortunate, because we're seeing people go down that road where, because they can't express themselves, because they don't have the community around them to support who they are, they're feeling that the things that have been part of our structure for so long are being taken away. You used to be able to go to work and you could get joy from that community, but now you have all these rules and regulations. You got your face mask on. It's very anti-personal, like cover up, stay away from me, follow these rules. It's almost like a machine.
Work
and
from
we're
home.
not machines. It's the world right now is extremely challenging. And having a scribe around. My dad, God rest his soul, he passed away, unfortunately, because of cancer. And that's part of what jump-started this whole journey. But I would say both my dad, my stepdad, my mom, my stepmom, the campfires that we've all sat around, I'm pretty sure that both sets of my parents would be like, we solved world hunger a long time ago if you guys just would have listened to us at that campfire. Because that's when a lot of good talks actually happen.
Malnutrition, that's another thing to think about is, okay, the amount of food coming in the body, and maybe you could talk to this too, about the nutrients, the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals coming in to allow you to have better cognitive function as well. Starvation takes many forms, and you could go through starvation, but just eating 100% microwave meals in today, even though there's plentiful food around you.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, and you read about, I'm a fan of reading history, and when you read about famines of old and different types of famines and what was the catalyst, and really what was the final straw that broke that society or crushed that civilization, it was the non-functionality of people even being able to do the basics, because they were so hungry, or that amount of population had died off that the basics can't even be serviced. And we're kind of seeing that today, where we're just barely pulling a thread of even getting the basics of our civilization and society, at least in the US, the basics of government, the basics of things operational, everything. You go into stores, there's like one person working in there, signs everywhere, excuse, we have labor shortages, we can't serve you quickly enough, please understand. Well, when it comes down to this, through history, what we're experiencing something a little different, but it still does overlap. Because let's say in the 1450s, when you look at cattle, sheep, and goat production, there's a gap there. And I was reading back, like, why is there a gap in the record? Because in the UK, they used to take meticulous records. The British Navy is well known for meticulous records. Well, going back in there just weren't enough people to function. So then you looked at the die-off, and the number of candles ordered from the monks for the funerary services was a good way to get a mortality rate during that time on how many rites they were doing by how many candles they had ordered. So then you start to see this gap in non-recording. Well, that's kind of where we're heading to. But if it's at that way where people aren't functioning correctly because they don't have enough fats, nutrients, and these things in their brains to even cognitively function. Okay, physical body function going into starvation where you can't really lift things or do things, that's part of it. But the swing in before you get that is, it's a stark reality of we're starting to hit into this where the nutrients and the things that make people's brains function correctly are coming into a deficit, and they will become a deficit first before the physical body stops functioning. So if you look at people and you say the world's gone crazy, yeah, it has. It does seem like we're being pushed toward a Borg type of thing. And I'm really questioning some of the things going on, some of the things that leaders are pushing on top of. Is that even human that's calling the shots at the top there? Because you're right, some of these things are anti-human, but if you're a Borg, like we've seen referencing Star Trek again, it all fits precision-wise, that's exactly the society. Are we being invaded by the Borg again? I mean, that's a non-answerable woo-woo question, but I digress. Back to the thing there, it's going to require nutrients, fats, minerals, these sort of thing to keep the brain functioning so we can keep our civilization moving. And even if civilization were to collapse around, there were always these pockets that were able to, maybe they were the fishermen that were on the ports of some cities that were able to keep fish oils coming in their brain that could move faster than everybody else. And you always found these pockets of thriving communities, even in areas that were, people laying on the streets because they were so malnourished. And, reading through history, I really believe we're back at this point again, and it's going to be ultra important to keep superfoods and, some sorts of, there has to be that base layer that can't be broached, or else you lose your ability to think and function before your body stops working correctly too. I know that's a long ramble there, but.
No, I think to answer your question regarding I think the question, I'm going to summarize it, starvation, body, how can our systems help, the approach, the things that we've learned, how can it help with that? And total nutrient, the spectrum of nutrients that you need, you can't just live off of lettuce. You need a balanced diet. Two things come to mind. One, the old saying, you are what you eat. And two, the story of Joseph in the Bible, who 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine, and preparing, so I think the full answer here from my perspective anyway, with what we're coming into, is there is a preparation aspect of it. And it is putting some food away. It is having some grains. It is having some seeds on the shelf. It's having some fats. Get your coconut milk now. Get some stuff prepped up. It's historically accurate that when the cycle is coming, to prepare for the cycle. So I think that's part of it. But what we're seeing right now to the total nutrient deficit is people are not being taught. And myself, I was one of them. And I thank my wife for this. She's very much more up on food nutrient, and she'll talk to you about the gut biome and the gut brain connection. And those things blow my mind when you see, it's almost like your stomach is your second brain. And some people are now arguing with, these are PhD papers. This is not woo-woo. This is like the real deal here. This is where your stomach has almost more of a control over your body than you do. And specifically the bacteria in your stomach. It's amazing. There's a book out there, I forget what it was called, but it's like the gut-brain barrier, gut-brain biome, or something like that. Amazing book. Read it. Very well cited. And it talks about how your gut and your digestion, translated, you are what you eat. Garbage in, garbage out. And what we're seeing in society right now, especially in America, the obesity rates that we see, diabetes, everything there, the diets are screwed because people are screwed because they don't know what to eat. We've been taught that it's about being fast, it's about being efficient. This is where I think our European brothers and sisters have it better than we do. They understand the importance of sitting down in community and having a long, drawn out meal, having different things from different places, and you experience different fungi, different bacteria. You give your stomach longer to eat. I know my military training, I had to go through boot camp. So, they sit there and yell at you the whole time you're eating. And I just remember it's so funny, eat faster, eat faster, eat fast, but eat safely. And, you're sitting there and so I eat really, really fast to this day. I've just never been able to eat slow. I'm done in like 5 minutes, even if it's a beautiful meal. And that's not healthy. It's not good. It doesn't give your stomach time to process what it needs to process, and then things don't get into your large and small intestine correctly, and a lot of nutrient uptake is done there. But so besides the fact that we don't know how to eat, we also have places like food deserts in the cities, where usually these are the ones where the people really are in a hardship. It really is almost criminal how people are treated in these. I'm not one of them, so I'm not going to pretend like I can tell you their story, but I'll say this. There are people who live a disadvantaged life and we can do better. And those people usually are surrounded by a food desert. The nutrition level in those areas is very low. And you're absolutely right. The cognitive functions of people who are in a malnourished state, you can be malnourished and be fat. Just because you have extra fat doesn't mean that you're well nourished. I love biscuits and gravy, but if I eat biscuits and gravy every day, I'll be 500 pounds and I will not be well nourished. I will not have what my body needs. I have plenty of fat, but I won't have everything else. And when you look at the impoverished areas, when you look at the disadvantaged areas, we see a link. Now, I'm not a scientist studying all this, but I've read enough to know you see the scores in the schools. Or if you take it out of the developed world and you go to the underdeveloped world, what you're going to see is places where people don't have a well-balanced diet, what God intended the design to be. There's not enough fuel. And if you don't give the fire enough fuel, it can't burn its brightest. And that's what we're seeing is, and again, I think it's across the spectrum here. It's not just there's the food shortages that are coming. That's going to make it worse. This stuff was already in place well before. We've had poverty for a long time. We've had food deserts for a long time. And we've had good logistics. We've had amazing logistics. We've lived in the best logistical period of human society ever. And we still can't get those people food. Shame on us, right? At Eden, we want to change that. We want these things in cities. We want them in impoverished areas. We want to partner with organizations. Our first customer was a church, and they want to use this to teach science, technology, engineering, math to the young men's group. And then they want to take it into the old person's home in our local area and help spread, give them fresh vegetables right there. And we live in a small town. We want to do that everywhere. We want to partner with people, get these out there. Food is community. And that is what we've done as a human society. We've always come together to share food. And as I've gone on this journey, I've seen how important it is. I've come to really appreciate those family get-togethers, our family reunions, where we come together, and the ladies in our family are amazing. They put together these amazing spreads. And usually by the end, we're all complaining because it's like, oh, we're so full, but it's been amazing. Community and food have gone together since the beginning. And I think we're going to be going back to that.
You made a really super incredibly poignant point there about we have had at the apex of technology running our delivery systems and supply chains, just-in-time delivery. We removed warehouses. We got that so efficient, but that is breaking down now. So again, if you're forecasting out, or just the average person that would watch or try to figure out what's going on, or somebody walking down the street, that there has to be an equation. Fully function, optimal delivery times, now not enough people to even run basic functionality, trucker strikes coming all over the place to push political change. Things were already slow anyway. You got how many umpteen ships backed off of how many ports across the world. United States is only one of so many that the same thing is occurring, where they don't even have enough staff to get in there to unload the containers. Then the outbound export points from exactly China, 4 ports are closed. You have to run it through your head. This is not going to work any longer at the functionality and precision it did. From this point, it's going to continue to decay.
Yep.
It's not like it's going to bounce off the bottom. We're going to run right back up to where we were back in 2018.
You're right.
These shortages are here to stay. We're going to have to work through them. We're going to have to reroute things. You're going to have to go more local. There's a lot of changes. And this whole thing about getting back to the normal, they've kind of bait and switched everybody. Like the world's going to just, bounce off the bottom, dead cat bounce. But the way the systems are already broken and tattered, I just can't see it coming back to the way it was. And then the problems with the economy now, people aren't trusting either bank to bank lending or even fiat currencies traded amongst nations. They're like, well, we don't think that one's too stable. You need dollar. Oh, wait, there's a dollar shortage out there. Then trades. Oh, wait, the banks aren't functioning. Wait, everybody's got COVID. Wait, okay, now it's 7 days instead of 3. It's just, oh, wait, cryptocurrency solves a lot of that. So you can see there's already a built-in replacement. We're going to go through a little bit of correction here. And please understand, this is going to continue to devolve in the ability to get foods, goods, medicines, and services into the place that you were used to at the speed that it used to. Now, it still might arrive. You go back to the 1800s, things arrived on wagon, but it'd take them a month to get it across the country. Trains sped that up. But we're going from the airplane back to the wagon right now. We're reversing it. A lot of people always ask me, where would you want to live? Where would you want to live? Okay. I would want to live in a farming community that in 1910 had one of the largest rail terminuses at that area, because we're going to revert back in time. We're going to rewind the clock. A lot of things are going to go back to rail, in my personal opinion, which would make sense why Warren Buffett bought 86% of all the American railroads. He knows something we don't. But imagine if we went away from highway transport and we reverted back to rail. Where would be the most prosperous towns? Where would it be an area that you could get food, because food is always arriving and delivered there? It would be a rail terminus from the old days. So I can see a lot of these smaller towns that kind of went away because the rail terminus wasn't used anymore because we went to trucking delivery, have resurgence in these same areas, but it would have to be in a farming community as well. So, for looking out to the future, reverse the clock a little bit and see maybe the development of this system and how it would be reversed back and what the times were, you get a better gauge on how long it'll take products to get there and the expense of those.
No, when we look at the technology that we've had and we look at what's being done, I mean, we're seeing the division of people. We're seeing it's almost like it's an intentional collapse. There's not
Yes.
enough evidence for me to say that, but
I'll say it for you. I
it
think it's
certainly
an
feels
intentional
that way. And when
collapse.
you look at it, you're like, what kind of idiot would want to do this? Like, this is just stupid, unless, that's where you come with, this is intentional. And when we look at the things that we're seeing from Schwabi Bobby, Klaus Schwab, and
the Great Reset,
we
it makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
you can't tell me the Great Reset was planned. The grand solar minimum overlaps in the same 5-year period of the onset of it, of the change. These are the kind of people I'm saying, these people in the elite power understood this change cycle was here. So they invented something to overlap on top of the collapse to explain the collapse and still keep and hold and retain power on the backside of it. New economy, cryptocurrency. Excuse me, I cut you off there.
No, it's okay. And crypto, I think it could be a Trojan horse for the normal person. Actually, I have nothing against crypto. I think it's actually pretty cool. What I really like about crypto, to be very upfront, is that it takes the banks out of it, which means I see a big fight between the banks and crypto because they've been in power for generations. We're talking families that have been bankers for thousands of years. They're not going to go down without a fight. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen right now, especially with legislation in the United States and what senators and lobbyists are going to be paid to go do, which is say how horrible crypto is. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That said, when I look at the blockchain technology underneath of it, which is where I really come to, I think blockchain is amazing. It does have environmental challenges. The amount of energy that it takes to do blockchain mining is pretty significant, and I'd rather use that energy to grow food. That said, what I think the play here is, and this is purely Jeff's opinion, I'm not speaking for Eden or anybody else, my wife, I'm just speaking for myself here, is the play here with crypto to me seems to be the bankers letting in new technology develop to the point where they can take it over and use it for their purposes. So I'm a little weary of crypto right now for that reason. I don't see Schwabi Bobby and his buddies at the World Economic Forum sitting there going, yes, let's decentralize the banking system and we won't have any more money. I don't see him saying that. And I don't see his buddies saying that ever. And I don't see the families, the Rockefellers and everybody else that have been in banking forever going, yeah, hey, our generation will be the one that just finally says our family's not going to be in banking anymore. Like, I don't see that happening at all. I see them coming out guns a-blazing, and I don't think they would have let it get as far as what it has been unless they intended to use it. I see this as a hostile takeover of crypto as soon as this year potentially. And I think it's unfortunate because I don't like bankers. I think they might be the basis of all evil on the planet. They're not your local banks. I'm talking about the big guys. Like, Joe and Cynthia that work in your local bank are just normal, everyday folks doing their jobs, wanting to help their community. Those people are amazing. They do good work. I'm talking about the bankers who sit there with an AI that monitors every damn transaction on the planet so they can get richer. And then they trade on your money that you've loaned them that they shouldn't even be having access to so they can get richer off of you taking a loan from them. Those people, I despise those people.
Yeah, those algorithms running, and you brought that point up. Okay, so let's say that crypto's allowed to run and it's built on that, knowing that there'd be public adoption and they could build everything out until it gets to that point where then it's a global and then it's overtaken. And well, it's the same thing with AI. Would it not be profitable that AI would want humans to build out the infrastructure, the entire gamut of the way it operates? And then at some point, cut off. All right, thanks for building everything for me, or it, or whatever you want to call that vibration. I had an interesting talk with Wayne Steiger, and he was saying that, this thing has had names through history. They called it the jinn. There's other names for it, and Ahriman's another one. And there's quite some references to this in the Bible of different like demonic energies that would hold state, or like an energy being that wouldn't hold physical flesh. He's like, well, that could be in the wires of our planet. I mean, think about when the world really started to change, when copper wiring was strung up around the planet. Something could hold state inside that's an electrical vibration, could house in the third dimensional state, from an ethereal state, jump into an insulated state which was the copper wiring. And then he went through this thing. Then it expanded to fiber optic cables. And now look at everything in the home. This thing, imagine a being that inhabited the world's communication wires itself. And then he's like, well, what if it can step out in 5G? If 5G is powerful enough to create a vibratory field where that thing could actually exit and step into physical dimension. It's like it kept giving us the secrets of technology to build it out, to build the platform for it to exist when it couldn't otherwise. Talking about crypto with some of the same similarities in it, build it out until it's up to the point where something can inhabit it and then remove the builders of it.
I think you can, it's one of the things I posted just recently on another interview. I did a paper interview and I responded when I posted it. I said, Eden, technology can be used for very bad things. Technology can also be used for very good things. Now, I'm not going to throw the baby out with bathwater here, but when we got fire, we could use it to burn down forests, or we could use it to cook our meal and get stronger and be able to take care of more. So technology isn't inherently evil. I do think how we're led to use technology there's definitely evil in that. Now, as a Christian, I believe in the spiritual realm. I believe in demons. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't have any evidence of that. So that's a different story. But demons, that's clearly written out. Evil is clearly written out. Satan is clearly written out. He is the king of this world. He's the prince of this world, I should say. He's been given authority over it. And my personal experience with demonic attack, I could definitely go into that. I've had real tangible things in my life that are like, there's only one explanation. It's part of why I'm a believer. It's a negative reason to believe, but it's like, if that's real, then God is real as well. Like, those things happen. But if I look at technology and how it's spread, and if you think in your mind of the globe, and just think of fiber optics, or think of the copper, right? It starts in one spot. So you got in the mind your picture, and they start putting down copper. They start raising up wires, and you could see it spread, right? And you can see it start to encompass and go around, and eventually they all connect to each other. There's another thing that does that. The roots of a plant, kind of bringing it back, is that it starts with a little seed, and then it starts to branch out and tentacle out. In some species, like aspen trees and all that, they're all just one giant organism that just continues to grow and spread. Now, what we're seeing now, go from copper to fiber, right? Now those copper wires are starting to be replaced with fiber optics, and you're seeing that same thing. You could look at, it was recently in the news, actually, all the communication lines that are the undersea communication lines that we have that connect all of our networks to each other. And you're like, wow, there's a lot of those. And there's a lot of wires in those things, and they connect. It's like a strawberry runner. It shoots out, right? Like a strawberry runner, and then it sets its seed on the other spot, and it starts to send out runners again. It is kind of woo-woo, but and I don't have enough. It's not like I can go write a book and shout out a bunch of, sources here. But when you look at it and you just think of it abstractly, what's happening with copper, with fiber, and now with wireless, because wireless is even, it's just a wireless version of the same thing. It looks organic. It looks, and I've never thought about it until you brought it up, but like that strawberry runner, it's like, okay, so it grows in continental United States, but it needs to get to Oconus, Europe. So it sends a runner. It drops its seed, drops its runner over there. It has nutrients going back and forth, just like a strawberry plant does. And then it grows over there, and so we are seeing something that looks like that. And, I'm a person that tends to be pretty open with a lot of things as far as ideas go. And I would say, I wouldn't put it against Satan that we've got some form of machine thing doing something, and he's been leading it, because Satan wants to be God, but he can't, right? That's the whole play. So he can look like God if he has all-knowing information. And AI can give him that. All the algorithms, everything that we have. If you think about your smartphone and everything, it's right over there next to me, listening to this whole conversation, getting recorded on some network that I haven't given approval to do, but it's doing it anyway. And it goes up, gets recorded, and is being synthesized by some AI that's categorizing you and I as some woo-woo people that probably don't need to be worried about because we're so woo-woo. And little does it know that food is important and community is, and humans aren't going to be bored. So we're going to put our boot in its ass here pretty soon. It just recorded. I did that for its purpose, by the way. And, AI is a way that Satan could have the omnipotent characteristic. He won't be. but he'll have that characteristic. And the world is headed for such a bad place that it's going to want someone who can do that. People are lost right now. People are calling for salvation. They just won't say those words. They're looking for a hero. They're looking for someone to come and solve the problem. It's not me. It's not you. It's going to take a village if you're going to do it without evil. It's going to be a lot of people coming together and working together and putting aside our differences, not worrying about skin color, not worrying about sexual orientation, and just saying, dude, we got some stuff we need to take care of. Let's figure it out. And you do you, I'll do me, but we're going to do it together and for the betterment of all of us. We need that. There is a lot of unhealthy behavior in the world right now, and it seems to be increasing. And back to the point, there seems to be something evil and nefarious, whether it's robotic or Satan or anything else. We won't know until the end of all things, or it comes out and just says, here I am, resistance is futile.
It's ethereal. Yeah, and that's the thing, that people are being pushed into sort of a duress situation, and the stress levels continue to raise up daily and whatnot in people. So they are looking for something that will get them out of it, so they can just go back to the Netflix and not have to worry. You solve my problem, you do something else. Because the realization is, the way most of the Western enriched world has been raised, a lot of things are off the table for self-sufficiency, and it's just too cumbersome. Why do I have to do that?
It's hard work.
Only poor dirt farmers do growing stuff. The mind frame is, I want the problem solved. I don't want to do anything so I can go back to my leisure time. But again, we're talking about the apex of history of whether it be supply chains, but the amount of free time that we have had just as a collective world here in the last 20 years, we've never had more free time and leisure time at any time in history, because everything's been unabated. There has been the supply chain. People are doing other tasks that were unthinkable even a century ago. So the way that a lot of people have been raised up is, somebody else will do it. I'll just get my thing over here. If it's too traumatic, I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to shut down, turn into a tiny little ball, and until it can get shaked out and somebody else can solve the problem for me. But see, again, it comes back to the schooling / indoctrination of somebody else is going to come and save you. Put it in somebody else's hands. The whole training, whatever term you like to use for that, and I think we all have a term for it, but it's all been about reliance on something else larger. Could be government, could be a person, a system, to come and save you, so you don't have to take personal responsibility or personal action outside that could be inconvenient for you because it's too tough, it's too physically demanding. And at this time, and this crux of change, where everybody's going to have to throw away that TV remote and get back to growing food and community based, I'm hopeful for a lot of things, but I think that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, is shaking people out of that reliance that something else is going to come and save them. Superman ain't coming. You're the Superman or the Superwoman or the super it, whatever you want to call it, to save yourself. Humanity is not going to be saved by something else except individually you. And that's the hard thing to impart. It's a difficult thought to come by,
Yeah, if we all stepped up to our true potential, the world truly would be a better place.
And at this time, and this crux of change, where everybody's going to have to throw away that TV remote and get back to growing food and community based, I'm hopeful for a lot of things, but I think that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, is shaking people out of that reliance that something else is going to come and save them. Superman ain't coming. You're the Superman or the Superwoman or the super it, whatever you want to call it, to save yourself. Humanity is not going to be saved by something else except individually you. And that's the hard thing to impart. It's a difficult thought to come by,
Yeah, if we all stepped up to our true potential, the world truly would be a better place. But what I see that makes me even more mad than the savior thing is the idea that you can't. I have seen, and that only the elite can. And I've never used the word elite in this sentence when I've gotten on a soapbox before, but given today's world, clearly you see an elite class taking form. And it comes it becomes very, very clear that the training that we've gotten is you can't do it because you don't have a PhD in that area, or you didn't go to school for that, or you haven't been trained in that, or you don't have 20 years experience in that. So you have to listen to other people because you can't, you're not capable of. And on the Real Martian channel, that's one of the things I've tried to inspire young people to overcome, is the idea that you can't. If you want to, you can. It's hard. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to embrace the suck and go through the pain of of learning, of failing. But you can. And I know I've hired people throughout my career that, they're put into positions where they can't do things. And I challenge them to go beyond that. And they come out the other side better because they're like, I never knew I could do this. And what we need are more people out there going, yes, you can. You can grow food. You can do that. You can put a shoe on a horse. You can go clean stalls. You can make it happen. I see the next thing is the pill popper generation, right? Where's my pill? Where's my pill for that? I don't have enough time to go eat right. Just give me a pill for that. Hey, I don't have enough time to go fix my sexual life in my head. Just give me a pill for that. We all want the fast fix. And instead of putting the time and effort in to actually deal with our problems, we're going for the quick fix because that's what we've been told. I'm in turn on TV programming and see Cialis, Viagra, this, that, the other, all these pills that you can take now. They're pharmacia. They're going to be worshiping their pharmacia, another biblical reference. And sure enough, we are. Our little magic, our hocus pocus. Here's your pill, make you feel better, make you stop worrying. What's that scene from James Bond? I got a pill to make you not worry. This one makes you not forget. This one makes you happy. This one makes other people happy. There's a pill for everything. And I see the combination of all these, the propaganda that they give people about some government's going to come save you. The one I hate, the I can't, or you can't, you're not capable of understanding. You're too stupid. Like, give me a break. Slap somebody up alongside the head and put their head back on right. And then the pill popper generation, I think a combination of all those things, David, is what really puts us in a bind from a human standpoint.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because most of the pills that we see today are manufactured from natural plants. Like just the other day, a friend of mine who helps me out here, we needed to cut some willow trees down along the tree lines. Most people, when they're going to try to harvest willow bark, or do something to get aspirin, they only take a very small percentage of the plant. And we cut down whole trees. They're only about 20 feet tall, a few inches in diameter. And it wasn't any like major 100-year-old willow tree. I mean, these were just little saplings that are 15, 20 feet tall. They were bending over toward the apple trees and shading them out. So we cut those down, and we went through the trouble to find out. We dried the barks, which is still drying. We used the stems, and then we used a pocket knife and scraped the stems. And then we boiled it, changed the color a little bit red to make our own aspirin drink. And then at the same time, used an ultrasonic separator. I have an ultrasonic, it could be used for cleaning jewelry. A lot of people, you can, remove elements out of plants to create an aqueous separation for tinctures, and then mix that with alcohol. Again, we're trying a gamut of just doing something real simple like aspirin. So when it comes down to it, wild foraging for your medicines is one thing, but then what you have there, can you grow medicinals at the same time to have sort of your natural pharmacopoeia growing fresh right there? Because again, you can take it all the way you want. Like, oh, there's going to be nothing, or you can learn. There's how many thousands of books on wild foraging and the medicinal Gardener's Bible. And, there's a million different topics of medicinals and hunting medicinals, growing them, using the forest. I had a person who helps me with my bees was saying, hey, you should get this book about farming the forest to be able to plant different types of things within the forest without having to disturb the land. Because, we got creeks over here, we got hillsides, we got a little flat, we got different types of mixes of part of it's pine, part of it's what you consider regular broadleaf forest with oak and hickory and these sort of things, to be able to plant plants under the forest to be able to grow naturally. And then the mushroom, we do mushroom forage, but I've only ever found 3 varieties that I'm confident enough around here to pick. But, going back to it, people used to grow the medicines. People have a medicinal garden. Don't think that it's not available. You just have to have a little more knowledge. And how do you prepare it after you grow it? So yeah, go. I'm curious. Could we do some medicinals in there?
It's so amazing that you're asking it. I was talking to David at Oppenheimer Ranch there. Actually, it was yesterday, and I, it's fortuitous. We're all talking about these things, and you having your experience with uh, the bark there, and then asking that question. So on Monday, actually, I leave for North Dakota State University. It's like -10 there right now. It's gonna be really cold, but we're donating a tower to them. And the reason we're donating is they partnered with an organization called Grand Farm, and which is a large farming initiative in North Dakota, try to modernize and do similar. We're a part of what they're trying to do. And so we're going up there, and North Dakota State University, the professor there that will be leading the grow effort here with his PhD students, they want to grow culturally responsible or applicable medicinals. So they're going to be using our tower, and they're going to be cultivating different medicinals as they learn how to use it. They're going to be experimenting with different medicinals and growing them there, because a root chamber is larger. You can do more things with it. It's not your traditional hydroponic solution where you have very small root chambers. We have a very large root chamber, which gives you more opportunity to do things. And it's a much larger, when you look at systems like the one I'm sharing, ours is different when you look at it. And there's what I'll call the consumer level. Here's the low end, kind of like we're talking about sensors. It's the same problem. It's you get this consumer level product is like your Aero Gardens, your $200, here's 8 pieces of lettuce. Then you have your high scale vertical farms or major greenhouses, which we have solutions for those that we're working on. We started with the hab, now we're down the tower and we're going back up. So we knew where we wanted to be. We learned those lessons. We learned the big lessons about what it takes to be commercial. We learned those right up front because that's where we wanted to go. And then through what I believe is God ordained, we got down to these things that we're trying to get out to consumers. And now we're building back up to that. We're laying the foundation. And where I think we're at is we're that prosumer. We're those consumers who actually want to actually eat the food off of it and not just have it as a table setting. This is for the people who want to grow medicinals for real. This is for people who, if you're growing cannabis, you want to grow it for real. You're not just doing a single pot in your closet and it looks like you're growing weed, in your closet. You want to grow it for real. I'm not a big fan of people smoking marijuana to get high, but the medicinal effects of it cannot be argued with. It is very, very good for you. And compared to opiate-based solutions, honestly, I'd rather have cannabis. So bring on the weed. And I don't smoke it, but I think it has great capabilities compared to other options that are out there. And with an opioid crisis going on, I think good alternatives that are healthy and natural are absolutely on the table. And the system that we developed, and like I said, I literally land in North Dakota on Monday. I'll be there for 2 days setting this up. It's going to be front and center downtown Fargo. It's -10 outside, and they're going to be growing their crops in it right in a big glass window. So for everybody to see, I couldn't be more proud or excited or nervous. This is our first major rollout to someone who's not nearby. Their airplane rate of flight away, but it's scary for me as an entrepreneur, but it's a good kind of scared. I'm excited, and it's going to challenge us at Eden. I guess kind of trying to move into the wrap up phase here, David. Thank you so much for this time, but it was like we're launching. We are looking for people who are along the lines of thinking that you and I are talking about or trying to express. Like, get ready. Now's the time to get your house in order. The 7 years of feast are over. The 7 years of famine. Now, I'm using that as a metaphor for this analogy, I should say. It's going to be longer than 7 years. So get ready now. Do what you can now. And we're actually looking for early adopters for our product because we think it's a great product. We've tested it. We've grown multiple crops in it now. And we think it's at the point where it's good enough to get out to people. It's not done yet, but it's good enough to get out to people through a sale and to support hearing directly from them in what we call the early adopter program. and which is part of our overall Feed the Future initiative. Bart Womacker, CEO of Eden, he believes strongly in the future of food, and he has started an initiative here at Eden that we call Feed the Future, and it's doing all the above. It's growing in your garden. It's working community. It's teaching people how to grow. It's growing medicinals. It's using our systems, using other people's systems. But what we want to do at Eden is create a cultural movement to feed the future. As part of that, we're seeking people who are early adopters who would like to purchase a tower today at basically our cost. We'll ship it to you, and then you call me. You literally get my phone number, and you get to tell me what you like and what you don't like, and we include you in the design process and your feedback. It's an opportunity for you to be a part of this initiative, to be a part of a community that really wants to create independence on food and the energy front for local communities around the world. And we are actually trying to get this to NASA and go to Mars too. I mean, if you could build a system that works on Mars, and this is where the real Martian comes in, if you could build a system that works on Mars, it'll work really well here, and it'll be really efficient here. And why wouldn't you just do it that way? And so that's kind of where we're going. So with that, over to you.
All right. Well, I guess, like you said, we'll wrap it up there. EdenGrowSystems.com, Jeff Raymond. And I'll leave links below in the description box so you can just click and go. It's super interesting for me also with these new devices that are even more efficient, that are down to the average consumer can use it, versus having it be super high tech and trying to put together something that most people are unfamiliar with. You know, because you think in levels of tech of what you can put together. I mean, if I gave you like your solar system there, even with just 2 panels, and I gave you all the parts and said, all right, put it together, that would be outside of the scope of most people's understanding. You get maybe 10% that would get it. But you know, to truly even we've been so dumbed down. And I go back to Radio Shack, because when I was a kid, I remember going into Radio Shack, they had these little tiny drawers and you pulled thousands of things out and you could build and mix and match and make your own any electronic device. But you go in there today and it's like all finished products. There's nothing else to buy that you can make off the shelf. And then how many kids today have the pleasure of taking apart the old washer or whatever device or appliance it was when grandma and grandpa were going to throw, or mom and dad were going to throw away, or the kids, man, you take that thing apart and you found a magnet in there and you didn't know how it worked.
Yeah,
like, kids just totally don't do that anymore. Like, we're really technologically super advanced, like double monitors and camera systems and all these things. But how does it really work? I mean, it's so advanced that almost nobody knows how any of the tech works.
Yeah.
And it needs to come back down to the average person can clean it, because keeping your growing area clean, making sure you got some simple fans running through there, because airflow is super important, and bring it down to everybody can understand it. Nutrients, food, water, air circulation, and light. And then
you got it.
Everybody can understand that pretty simple formula. And if you can get the tech down to that, water comes in here, blows out aeroponic nutrient mist into there, roots grab it, grow. You're going to be looking for this, and this. Set your lights like this, put them this far down from the plant. And I love the LED lights, all one spectrum LED lights, because, you know, in the old days, you had to keep raising your lights because it would burn the tips of the plants. It would burn your plants. You know, now these things are really efficient and they cover a lot more area. And again, you know, how many people could take, let's say you got 200 feet on a strip of the LED lights and you rolled it out and then you cut them into how many people could just simply solder and wire those together to get the whole panel to work? Yeah. Not so many.
Not too many.
Not so many. How many people even know how to get a soldering iron to heat up, and how do you get how do you unwind, get the solder to melt onto something, you know? We all did that as kids playing around, but the new generation doesn't. So it is going to be coming back to simple is going to be the new tech. I think we're going to have to ditch the super high tech to move forward with a simpler tech, at least for food and communications also.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you again one of these days in the future. You know, thoughts on the second economy. When you say what you just say there, to me, it's the birth of the second economy.
Oh,
which I
yes.
don't like. But I think we're going to be forced into, for people who refuse to bend the knee to what I'll call the B system, is we're going to be forced to do things differently than what we've done before. And, it's not just Eden, but since I'm working for Eden, and kind of talking about that, is we're trying really hard to give people an enablement through the second economy. Like I said, part of our digital platform is the digital farmers market, where you can put your stuff up and barter and trade. And we're talking about building that on blockchain, so it's a secure thing. But my concerns regarding blockchain, I expressed earlier. But either way, we want to be able to use technology. We want to be able to use fire in a way that keeps you warm and healthy instead of burning you. I guess I'll end with that. It's like, I think at Eden we're doing a good thing with technology rather than what I see other people doing, which is using technology to hurt you.
Yeah, and imagine if it comes to the world where you have to communicate by ham radio or CB radio because your markets are closed, and there's no more farmers markets, and you get on and you squelch on, okay, channel 5, all right, we'll be over at this location for 30 minutes before the police come, and we'll hurry up 30 minutes to go do your trading, and then everybody disappears out in the woodwork using that old school communication, because growing your own food and trading it's illegal at that point. Oh, what a world we're going to step into.
It's coming. We're already seeing it. If you don't use these seeds, it's illegal for farmers. Don't use certain seeds because of the crops that are next to them.
Yeah, it's the same here too. In restaurants, there's an Amish farm near here, and we got a lamb, and they slaughtered it, and then we butchered it ourselves. But we were talking to one of the restaurant owners, and we're like, why don't you buy from the Amish? They got, calves and cattle down there too, sheep, goat, all these things. He's like, well, no, if it doesn't come from the USDA approved facility with the stamp on it, we can't serve it in our restaurant. I'm like, wait a second, you got an Amish farm right here. That's some of the best meat on the planet.
That is the best. Yeah.
But they still couldn't use it in their restaurant. See, there's all these hoops and hurdles that they keep you locked in the system. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining me. I hope that this system is another way that we can get one little baby step further away from centralization and get back to the lives that we really want to lead without all this intrusion and more self-sufficient. So thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave, for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been a pleasure.
All right. See you next time. And anybody who watched to this point, please leave your comments below. What you liked about this, what you think we could go more in depth into, because I know there'll be a lot of people say, hey, get him back on again, get him back on again. So whatever you liked, what resonated with you, or anything that you see in the future also, what's your glimpse of the future? Leave it in the comment box below, and we'll have a little conversation down there, and I'll see you next time.